So this is look at the Sichas Chelik Chav Beis. And this is a Sicha that has to do with Sfira Sa'imer. And it's interesting, this is a Sicha that not only discusses the Sfira Sa'imer, which is Parshas Emor, but also the time of the year, it's time of Sfira. It also explains the meaning of davening. And we'll see how we get to davening, but it explains what, actually from a halacha side, but it's more than just plain halacha. What do you have to think? How do you have to feel when you daven? What is the meaning of davening? And it's a very, very important Sicha. But it starts off with the mitzvah of Sfira. So we'll read it like this. The mitzvah of Sfira Sa'imer. Concerning the mitzvah of counting Sfira. We're this week's Pasha that we've commanded to count Sfira. And the Rebbe quotes the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, you should count from the day after Shabbos, which means the day after Yontif, which means the second day of Pesach, from the day that you bring the Korban Eimer. So you have to start counting the days ad memachas Shabbos Hashvius till the end of the 7th week. We count 50 days. Really, we only count 49 days. It's 7 weeks. That's what they have. This is the mitzvah. So this mitzvah that we're talking about, so according to many commentaries and many poskim, the inyan of Sfira is it's a preparation and getting ready to the Yontif of Shavuos, which is the time when we receive the Torah. And he quotes the words of the Chinuch. This is what the Chinuch says. We were commanded to count from the day after Pesach, which means the second day of Pesach, which is the day after Yontif, because Be'emes there's only one day, the first day of Pesach. The next day is already not Pesach. We have 2 days, but really originally it's only one day. That's just all they have one day. So the day after Yontif of Pesach, we count the days till the day of the giving of the Torah. Why? To show in our nefesh the longing, the wish, the willing, the looking towards to the special important day, the lebenu in our heart, just like an eved who's looking for the future, and he always counts. When will come the day which he's waiting for, longing for, to go out free? And this is saying also, we're counting the days, which is an expression of our waiting for the day that's going to come, the day of Matan Torah. Because when you count the days, it shows by the people that all you're looking towards and all your will, what you're looking for, what you're longing for, is that day that you're counting for. And that's the of Sfira, preparation to Matan Torah. That Teichen Binyan Anal from Sfira Sa'imer, this is what we said, is not just like a Chassidish pshat or a deeper inyan. What is inyan of Sfira? It's negayah to halacha. This brings sich an inyan Anal Bekama Poskim, that this inyan, that this is a preparation to Matan Torah, is brought in the Poskim. The Lavush there says, als einer von den Teimen, was ihr macht nicht kein Shechion of Sfira Sa'imer. It's one of the reasons why we don't make Shechionu when we start counting Emor. We know that every time we come to a mitzvah that only comes once a year, we make Shechionu. So this is a mitzvah that we should make Shechionu. Why not to make Shechionu? So the Lavush says the second reason that he gives is because we only make a bracha if this is a mitzvah be'emes on its own. But if it's only a preparation to another thing, then we don't make a Shechionu for it. This is the second reason. The first reason he gives is because the second reason he gives it, the reason that it says here, because it's not a thing for itself. The second one is because we're going to make a bracha. In other words, what I just said before, I mixed up the two reasons. Let's go back again. That one reason is because because of the Sfira, is because of Tzorech Yontif, because of Yontif, and Yontif Shavuos, we won't make a Shechionu. But this is another reason. Another reason here is because its whole Teichen is not a mitzvah for itself, basic, almost like saying it's not a mitzvah for itself, so don't make Shechionu for it, because this is only in order to prepare ourselves to another thing. The other reason is because we're going to make Yontif the bracha. We're going to be Yetzer with the Shechionu we make then, but this is for a different reason, because it's an inyan for preparation only. So on one hand, we're saying here that the mitzvah of Sfira is only a preparation for Matan Torah. Afal became Zetman as the mitzvah from Sfira Sa'imer is a mitzvah. On the other hand, we see that Sfira Sa'imer is a mitzvah on its own. Umit Ashleim is a mitzvah. And it's a complete mitzvah. Bisman Abayis and Nebizman Azeh. The time of the Beis Hamikdash for sure it was a complete mitzvah, even nowadays. Later days, but depending on which opinion. Sidos is midaraisa or midarabona zeichel hamikdash. There's two opinions. Is this mitzvah now midaraisa? Just like in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, we had to count svira from the Torah. We still have to count svira now too. Some hold it's only midarabona because midaraisa you only have to count when they brought the korban neimer. So from those days you count. Nowadays that you don't have a korban neimer, so it's not a mitzvah that I some hold. So it's a mitzvah that Rabbanon, but it's a full-fledged mitzvah. We make a brocha, nochmal jeden Tag, we make every day a brocha. These are durch Svirchas Eimer, was is a mitzvah, kolech odech misrol. So much so is it's important in itself that this mitzvah of Svira, which we know is a mitzvah for every individual, like the Pasuk says, Usfartem lochem, you shall count, lochem plural to you means, shetei Svira l'kolech od vechot, everybody should count. This is not like the mitzvah of counting the years, the 7 years of Shemitah and then the years towards Yovel. There it's a mitzvah to count, but there the Pasuk says, Usfartem l'cho. L'cho means singular, this is a mitzvah on the Bezdin. Shvira Seimer is a mitzvah for every single person. So it's such a strong mitzvah that through Shvira, Vertuvkitan as B'yema Chamishim Leimer is Chag HaShavuos. And the 50th day is the Yontif of Shavuos. So all the Yontif of Shavuos depends on the mitzvah of Shvira. Because in the Torah we don't find a date for the Yontif of Shavuos. Every Yontif has a date. Pesach is the 15th day of Nisan. Shavuos is Sukkot is the 15th day of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Tishrei. The Kippur is the 10th day of Tishrei. Shavuos has no date in the Torah. It just says count 50 days Svira, and then you'll have the day after that is Shavuos. So Shavuos depends on Svira. So we see Svira is not a real thing. It's just in order to get to something. This makes Shavuos. That means Svira is a full-fledged mitzvah. So we have in Shavuos, in Svira, two things. On one hand, it's basically only a preparation, how we prepare ourselves to Matan Torah, to Shavuos. But on the other hand, it has its own quality, its own specialty. Now, in Gedder Sfira Seimer, based on what we just said, what Sfira Seimer is, that it has these two sides to it. We could explain why the Alter Rebbe put the mitzvah Sfira, the counting of Sfira, at the end of the Siddur. The Alter Rebbe wrote the Siddur. And there he writes the Nuschoyes, what to say and everything he writes. And he made an order the way he put the Siddur. That's where our Siddur comes from. But Alter Rebbe made it, and the last thing he made in the Siddur is Sfira Seimer. And we look in the Siddur Torah Eir, which is considered the Alter Rebbe Siddur, or in the Siddur, other Siddurim, Tilas Hashem Siddur, the new Tilas Hashem Siddur, they did it differently. They made Sfira right after Ma'ariv, because that's more convenient. And this is they said that this is a user-friendly way to write it, so it's more convenient, so they put it there. But when you take the real Siddur that Alter Rebbe wrote, Sfira is the end. And the Rebbe is going to explain the Chura that needs an explanation. Why is Sfira at the end? And he explains why he needs an explanation. He says, you do a Geit Ladik, we say that from the Alter Rebbe Mechol Yonah. We know that Alter Rebbe was very mesuder, very organized in everything that he did. Befratin Seder Tefillah, especially in the order of the way he put the davening, was Teichna, he Seder Tefillah Mekol Hashana. The Siddur, which is the Seder Tefillah Mekol Hashana, it's a Seder of the Tefillahs of the whole year. So this is a real Seder. So everything that here is with a Seder is organized. So since he's organized, and especially when it comes to this organized thing, Siddur is an organized inyan, is moving. The Seder in them is betachos hadiyik. So for sure that the Seder that he made is exact, is meduyik exactly. In order 11, the Rebbe says, especially Tzemach Tzedek said that the Alter Rebbe, when he established his Siddur, he had 60 different versions of davening in different details, in different Siddurim, and he chose the best of all, and he made his Siddur. So he was so medayek to make the Siddur in every detail of his Siddur, including the order. The Diyuk in the Siddur is noch mer mudgish. It is more even stressed. You could see more that this is exact and that there was a special intentions why he did whatever Siddur he did. And we vergleich das in the Siddur in Siddur Arizal. If we compare it to the Seder the way it is in the Siddur Arizal. Was the Alter Rebbe Siddur doch a Pinusach Arizal. Alter Rebbe Siddur is a Nusach Arizal. I just want to explain that a little bit. We call Alter Rebbe Siddur our Nusach, we call Nusach Arizal. The Arizal didn't write as Nusach. The Arizal, we have the Kavanas of the Arizal in davening. Based on the Kavanas of the Arizal, there are a few people who made the Siddur based, since the Arizal writes he doesn't write, but his kavanas are written. So through his kavanas, we see how the order of the Seder has to be. And there are two people, as the Rebbe brings in the order 12, that made each one called it Seder Arizal. They have the Arizal's davening based on and then they have all the kavanas printed, they're written there. One was made by the Shapiro Ashkeber, one was made by Yankov Koppel, and they are called the Seder Arizal. And Alter Rebbe is also called Seder Arizal. So they also didn't, it's not that they have the Arizal wrote the Nusach HaTfilah. They understood through the kavanas of the Arizal how the Arizal wanted the Seder to be. So they made the Seder. The Alter Rebbe did the same thing. The Alter Rebbe also, it's called, as you look in the beginning of the Siddur, Al-Pi Nusach Arizal. It's not the Arizal's Nusach, Al-Pi Nusach Arizal. The Alter Rebbe also learned all the kavanas, and through the kavanas, he figured out how the Seder is supposed to be. The Alter Rebbe made the special Nusach, but it is similar to the Siddur Arizal. So if we compare the Alter Rebbe Siddur to the Siddur Arizal, we see in this Inyan it's different. But in Sidurei Arizal Shel Risi, those Siddurim, which we call Siddur Arizal, that the Rebbe said, I saw, is the sea of written Sfira Seimer. The end is not with the mitzvah of Sfira, nor with the kavanas from Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. The end is with the kavanas of Shmini Atzeres, the kavanas, the big kavanas you have to think about, Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. That's how their Siddur finishes. And that's Siddur Arizal. The Alter Rebbe is also a Siddur Arizal. The difference is the Alter Rebbe didn't write the kavanas. The Alter Rebbe wrote the Siddur based on the kavanas of the Arizal. So the Siddur is Arizal, Alpi the kavanas of Arizal, even though the Siddur itself doesn't have the kavanas. Very few places where the Alter Rebbe put in the kavanas. So if we compare this to the Siddur Arizal, the other Siddur Arizal, that makes the question even stronger. Why is Sfira at the end? Besides the fact that there must be a good reason for it. We see that there's a svara not to do that. We see the other Siddur Arizal did not do it. They have something else at the end. But not Sfira. So why did the Alter Rebbe put Sfira there? So by Pashtas, Yesh Lavayir in town was that Alter Rebbe Meshana given the Siddur and Siddur say the Siddur Arizal. By Pashtas, you could say the reason why the Alter Rebbe changed in his Siddur. Lagabe the way the order is in Siddur Arizal, you could say simple. The Alter Rebbe Siddur is ki yedu Hashav l'chol nefesh. Nitvi Siddur Arizal was if Yechidas Gula. The Siddur Arizal, both of them, or any Siddur Arizal, is the Chatchila made with the kavanas in it. Most people don't follow that. It's not shaykhs to most people. So Yechidas Gula for very select few. The Alter Rebbe did not do that. He also wrote the Siddur based on the kavanas Arizal, but he didn't put in the kavanas. And that's why it's called a Siddur that's Shaveh l'chol nefesh. A Siddur that's for everybody. It's not for special people. So the Alter Rebbe wrote a Siddur for everybody. That Alter Rebbe is a Siddur nicht reingestellt alle kavanas from Arizal b'Siddur. And we know because he wanted to make everybody should be able to use it. He didn't put in the kavanas of the Arizal in the Siddur. Therefore, he decided in Siddur Admor Azokna. So there, it's basically not begilui the kavanas of the Arizal. So he had the order in a practical way. So the Seder, the way the Alter Rebbe made, since there's no kavanas, if you have the kavanas written, so you have to follow according to the kavanas. But the kavanas are not in the Siddur, even though the Nusach is Alpi the kavanas, according to the kavanas. So in a very practical way, things which are common, always, is first, like davening shachar, everything. Things which are not steady, the mitzvahs was kum and pa'amachat hashana, those mitzvahs that come once a year, those that come once a year, they're written according to the time of the year, the order of the year. Chanukah, Purim, Seder Korban Pesach, then you have the Seder Korban Pesach, Haggadah Shel Pesach, Ulach, as a Sfira Seimer, after that Sfira Seimer, so that's why Sfira Seimer comes at the end, because according to the order of the year, comes at the end. In order 17, the Rebbe says, but there are other things in the Siddur also, mitzvahs, Mila, Pidyon Aben, and that's not connected to any time of the year. And usually you do it in the morning, so the Alter Rebbe put it in after Shachris, etc., etc. Then you have the Brochas of a Chasana, and that's because it's connected to benching, because they say the Brochas of benching, and it's not connected to the year. Anyway, that has a different order, but the other things is this order. So that's a simple reason why the Alter Rebbe puts Sfira Seimer at the end, because Sfira Seimer is not steady. The Mele doesn't belong in the beginning. Some of the things which are not steady, so it depends on the order of the year, and the way the Alter Rebbe put it, starts with Chanukah, Purim, Korban Pesach, and Haggadah Shel Pesach, and then ends up with Sfira Seimer. So that's a very simple reason. But since the Alter Rebbe, when he wrote the Siddur, he wrote that it should fit to what the poskim say according to halacha. And at the same time, even though he based it on halacha, he also based it on the kavanas of the Arizal. We said before, nor they say this the kavanas of the nitmaite given. These secrets and these kavanas he didn't copy, he didn't write them. It should be for everybody. Even for those people who are not shaykh to have intentions and think about all these kavanas. But nevertheless, the Siddur is based on the kavanas. He's moved, for that we understand as Eva Seder in Siddur is not nor behesem to pashtas and yonim. Therefore, we have to say that the order, the way he made the Siddur, is not only because of a simple reason. It must be a connected the way it's apinigle, what the union of Sfira Seimer is, the contents of what it is, and also with Pnimis and Apikabola, Apikavana Sarizo. So in that case, we're back to the question. If the Alter Rebbe made the Seder according to the Kavanas Arizal, even though he didn't put the Kavanas in, but it fits to the Kavanas, and we see in the other Siddur Arizal, which goes with the Kavanas, Sfira Seimer is not the end, so why in the Alter Rebbe Siddur, which also follows the Kavanas, even though he didn't write the Kavanas, why over there, it doesn't fit, it finishes with Sfira Seimer, and not like they finish with something else. So we have to say this, according to this. But Sfira Seimer, that the reason why Sfira Seimer comes to end of the Siddur, by when their mitzvah from Sfira Seimer, Kumba at Gosha Yesera, the Teichel in the Kudi Ikas from Ninyan Atfilah, or Penigabal Pisod, the comment. We have to say because Sfira Seimer represents the Nakuda, the point, the Nakuda, and the Teichel of what davening is. The Siddur is the union of davening. We know that the end of things, that brings out the whole Nakud of the thing. We know by different things, the beginning is what counts. The beginning is the foundation, and the foundation always contains everything in the Nakud of what's going to be later. And the end is the sum, the total of everything. So the end represents what the whole thing is. Since the Siddur is Tefillah, so the end is Sfira, because Sfira expresses and tells us what Tefillah is. So the whole concept of Tefillah is in the Inyan. We see that Inyan in Sfira Seimer. And that's why Sfira Seimer is the end. And that's connected, as we'll see later, to what the Rebbe started in the beginning. It has to do with the Inyan that Sfira has two Inyanim. Sfira is only a preparation to something else, to Shavuos. On the other hand, Sfira is its own Inyan. And we'll see that later, how that falls into place into this Inyan. But in the Kudah, the Rebbe is going to explain how Sfira expresses what Tefillah is. Now the Rebbe is going to go into what Tefillah is. The mitzvah from Tefillah is, the mitzvah of davening is, as I said in the beginning, here shows, the Rebbe shows, even up Yalocha, what is the meaning of davening. The mitzvah of Tefillah is, with the Rambam Zog, the Rambam says like this. Mitzvah sesel is palabel kol yom. It's a positive mitzvah to daven every day. Shneimar, because the Pasuk says, "V'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem," you shall worship, you shall serve God, Hashem your God. The Piyah Shmuel Lomtu, the Chacham learned out, they had in tradition handed down. Shavei Dazu Tefillah. When it says you shall serve Hashem, it means to daven. Shneimar, because by another place it says, "Ulo'ov b'chol avavchem," you should serve Hashem with your heart. Omer Chachamim. What do you mean serving with the heart? Serving, we mean is a practical thing. You serve somebody, you bring them food. Even by David Azorah, how did they serve David Azorah? They brought karbonas. So what does it mean, serving with your heart? Davening is the Aveda, the service of the heart. So we see what is the mitzvah of tefillah, the service of the heart. From Akamacher, in a different place, the Rambam is the Rambam Metayr, the mitzvah sese. The Rambam describes this mitzvah of davening, Laved es Hashem b'chol yom b'tefillah, to serve Hashem every day with davening. So davening is considered service. Service of what? Of your heart. What does that mean? Einem from the Biyurim al Pinigla of them was tefillah and from Aveda Aveda Shebelev. One of the explanations al Pinigla. This is not even going to Chassidus, because we're explaining the Rambam. The Rambam you have to explain al Pinigla, al Pialocha. So one of the explanations that what is the pshat that tefillah is an Aveda Shebelev? What is the chalatz an Aveda? Aveda, everyone knows Aveda is work. Why is this work? It's a work of the heart. What does that mean? Kevan Daruis Lena for Loshen Rambam Gufa. Look into the Lashon of the Rambam, we'll see what it means that davening is an Aveda. It's not simple. It's a job. It's working, but the work of the heart. And this is what the Rambam writes. Chiv mitzvah zu kachu. The obligation of this mitzvah is so. A person should beg, and this is the main word here, and daven every day. And how do you do it? First, you praise Hashem, and then you ask for all your needs from Hashem, asking, requesting, and begging. Then you thank Hashem for all the good He gave you. And that's what we do, Taka. The Shemoneh Esrei is made up of 3 parts. The first part of the Shemoneh Esrei, till the end of Keilah Kodesh, is when we praise Hashem. Then comes all these requests in the middle. We request for Seichel, request for the Refuah, we request all the things. And at the end is we thank Hashem. But the Rambam says all this has to be done nischanen and bitchino. And from there we see what is the mitzvah of davening. And how is davening an aveda of the heart. The Asbara Bezet explanation is like this. Mitzvahs are divided into 2 categories. You have mitzvah shebamaisa, which is most mitzvahs, a mitzvah that you have to do. It's an action. Or maybe some are posher, you got to do something. Maybe just sitzes, film, putting on sitzes, putting on film, something you got to do. Others. Other bedibur. Or some mitzvahs you have to say, which is also called a act. Maisa zutras, it's called a small maisa. The Gemara calls it a miniature maisa. If you read the Megillah, if they tell you Tzis Mitzrayim, Pesach night, here, what is the mitzvah? What you say, you have to say the Megillah. You have to say Sipur Tzis Mitzrayim. What you have to read. So these are mitzvahs that have a maisa. Then you have another category, the mitzvah shel chevis alvavis. Then you have mitzvahs, which is the obligation of your heart. The Abbas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, to love Hashem, to fear Hashem, etc. What's the mitzvah that you have to feel in your heart? The feeling and the kavanah that you have, that is the mitzvah. So you have 2 separate mitzvahs, 2 separate kinds. Some the mitzvah, what is the mitzvah? The act. And some, what is the mitzvah? A certain kavanah, a certain feeling, a certain things that you have in your mind. Abbas Hashem, Yiras Hashem. Mitzvah tefillah is meyuchad bezeh. Tefillah is an exception. How is an exception? Azafa pili tefillah muzayim bedibur dafke. Tefillah has to be with words. You have to say it. You can't just think it in your mind. You have to say bedibur. You have to say it. Izabati ma'isa mitzvah tefillah. What is the act of the mitzvah? The Rambam's loshen sheyeoda mischanen beg mispalel and daven b'chol yom every day. Which means that teichen for mischanen is aveda b'rek. Mischanen means you have to feel it. Nitasi or the dibur. It's not doing something or speaking. So here you have 2 parts to it. You have the part of the feeling and the part that you have to speak. Now, a lot of mitzvahs are like that. Afa pia bekame mitzvahs is the din. The mitzvah shall tell you tzrichas kavana lots of mitzvah. Many mitzvahs the din is that it's not enough that you do the mitzvah. You have to have a certain kavanah. And if you're missing the kavanah, you're not makayim the mitzvah. Which has a spell the kavanah liyatza the chavasem and atayra. Certain mitzvahs, if you don't have the kavanah, you do the act. The mitzvah is made up of 2 parts: the act and the kavanah. And if you don't have the kavanah, some of the mitzvahs you're not yet to the mitzvah. But that's not the same as tefillah. Why? Es is not aninya from kavanah sa mitzvah. So manita chelik from the mitzvah gufa. By those other mitzvahs, the mitzvah is the act. The act needs something to it in order to yet to the mitzvah. So the act needs a kavanah. But if you want to use the word, what's the chefsa mitzvah? What is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is putting on film. Now it's possible that if you don't have the kavanah, what is behind the mitzvah film, you're not yeseh. But that's not the act of the mitzvah. That's the kavanah mitzvah. So those mitzvahs have 2 things. They have the maisa mitzvah, the act of the mitzvah, and the kavanah mitzvah. Some mitzvahs, the kavanah is very important. But here, aber bat tefillah is the chefza for ma'isa tefillah mischaden and mispalel. What is the act of the mitzvah? Is the act of the mitzvah that you're begging the Eibusher. The feeling that you have is not the kavanah of the ma'isa mitzvah. That is the ma'isa mitzvah. The mitzvah is the kavanah. But there are mitzvahs just kavanah. Like we said, Abbas Hashem, what's the mitzvah? Kavanah. Then there is no ma'isa there. Fine, that we have mitzvahs of only kavanah. Here, the mitzvah has a maisa, a dibur. You have to say it. And nevertheless, what is the kavanah? Kavanah mitzvah is not a kavanah. It's a kavanah, but that kavanah is the maisa, is the chefs of the mitzvah. Mischanim kavanah salev. Or Galosh Naramblan, the Rambam says lachazeh. He says later, as we said before. Then you ask for your needs, you have to ask for your things with a begging. What's a begging? So when you ask for the things, you say the words, please give me so and so. You have to say it with feeling. And if you don't say it with feeling, it's not the pshat, you were missing the kavanah. The kavanah is very important. You didn't even do the maaseh. See, by other mitzvahs, let's say tefillin, which some hold that tefillin needs kavanah. If you don't have kavanah, you're not yetzer. The kavanah is not the maaseh. You just missed the kavanah of the mitzvah. And maybe you're not yetzer. Here, you didn't even do the maaseh mitzvah. The maaseh mitzvah is not just the speaking. The maaseh mitzvah is the speaking with the kavanah. So it's not two aspects of the mitzvah. There's one aspect. What is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is to speak with feeling. So feeling is part of the mitzvah. In order for to be able to fulfill the mitzvah this way, you need something before. Like the Rambam says, take your mind away from all thoughts. And you have to make yourself feel as if you're standing in front of the Shechina. And when you daven, after you have that introduction, when you daven, you will have the feeling. You will be begging the Eibush. The begging is a feeling. If you don't have that feeling, is neat, nor at the Gavra is mitzvah. Not only you were not, the person was not yetzer, like by other mitzvahs. There are some mitzvahs, you did the mitzvah is fine, but you didn't do it properly. You didn't have the kavanah. So the person didn't fulfill his obligation. In this case, it's not. Notice, you don't have the actual object of the mitzvah. The dibur is nitken tefillah. When you spoke the words and you didn't have the feeling, these are not words of tefillah. The words of tefillah are only considered the maisa of the tefillah if the words come along with the feeling. So the feeling that you have is the mitzvah itself. And in order 36, the Rebbe goes into all arichas. So the famous thing that's known for Rabbi Chaim Brisker, the Rebbe writes, that the Chaim Brisker says that if Ishas you're davening and you're not feeling, don't realize or you don't think, you're standing in front of Hashem, that's not called tefillah. And the Rambam says, called tefillah, sheni b'kavon, ain't it tefillah, it's not called tefillah. But here the Rebbe says a step further. There it comes out, it's not called tefillah, meaning seemingly means you're not yetzer tefillah. The Rebbe says not only is it not yetzer tefillah, you did it, by other mitzvahs you say you did the ma'aseh, but you're not yetzer. Here, that's not what, you didn't do tefillah b'chlal. It's not tefillah. Tefillah is only the feeling. So this is the description of tefillah. It's very important to keep this in mind. This is the halacha of it. And the Rebbe teaches in Rambam, this is what the Rambam says, the halacha of tefillah is the feeling. And if you don't have the feeling, not only you don't have the proper kavanah, which could affect the tefillah, you didn't daven. It's not tefillah. The inyan anal shebetefillah, this that we said concerning tefillah, as dafke the yedi v'kavanah mach the cheftze for mitzvah tefillah, that the knowledge and the kavanah that you have, the feeling that you have, not only is the kavanah of the mitzvah. This makes the mitzvah being a mitzvah. Und non dem heißt es nicht gechefze von tefillah. Without it, there is no, we call it chefze, the object of the mitzvah is not there b'chlal, is the gilu in Sfira Seimer. Where do we actually see it? La halacha in Sfira Seimer. We said before, Sfira Seimer brings out what tefillah is. So we just brought out what tefillah is. The feeling behind it, that makes the mitzvah. That we find by Sfira Seimer. Where do we see it? That Alter Rebbe Paskin like this. Mutter lisper b'chol loshen shemev. You could count Sfira any language you understand. But on the other hand, if you don't understand the language, if you say the words, but you don't understand the words that you said, even if you said them in Hebrew, if you don't understand it, you're not yetzer. Why? Since you don't know the amount, the number that you said, because you didn't understand it. So what's the Alter Rebbe's Lashon? The Rebbe stresses, Ein zu Sfira Klau. It's not Sfira. Alter Rebbe doesn't say you're not yetzer the mitzvah. In other words, there, the words themselves is not the mitzvah at all. Same like mamash like davening. It's not the pshat. There is the ma'aseh mitzvah. You have to say the words, but then there's a kavanah you have to have, and if you don't have kavanah, you're not yetzer. So you did the mitzvah, but in a way that you missed something, and you're not yetzer. You didn't count, and that makes a lot of sense. Counting is nothing. Counting is knowledge. If I count, why do I count something? I want to know what I have. Why are you counting money? I want to know how much money I have. Stop counting and not knowing. Imagine a person counts and he doesn't know how much he has. So it's not a pshat, something missing. That's not called counting. Same thing so that's what Sfiras Eimer is. Sfiras Eimer is you have to know what you're saying. That's a kavanah, but the kavanah makes the mitzvah. And the kavanah is the chefza mitzvah. That's the mitzvah. Das heißt, der Linie von Mitzvahs Asfira is nicht the pull of Sfiras Hayom B'dibur. It's not, the mitzvah is not just, it's not saying the words, but you use the words. You have to say it B'dibur. But that's not what the Nakud of the mitzvah is. Nor the Yediyah Sa'adam. It's what you know, what you're saying. The counting means now you know what the number is. And if you don't have that machshava, that thought, you don't know that, you don't have this kavanah, is a nit no nit yaitze. It's not that you're not yaitze the obligation of the mitzvah, which means the person didn't do it correctly. There was no sfira. This is not sfira. Ein zu sfira klal. This is not sfira klal. So here we see a similarity between sfira, what in the mitzvah of sfira is similar to what the whole mitzvah of davening is. Davening also you have to say b'dibur. Shak sfira you have to say b'dibur. You have to say it. But the ikir is the kavanah of what you said. The kavanah, not of the words that you said, but the feeling behind what you said, just like my sfira. So, the Baal Rebbe says that the Metzias von Tefillah wird geschaffen at the Kavanas Avodas Sodom, since the Metzias of Tefillah, not only the fulfillment of the obligation, but the Tefillah itself, what is it? Happens through the person's Kavanah. He's moving al reish is the Shina bel Chavet and the Gabriel de Tefillah the Masal is there. So the first and foremost thing is that it has an effect on the person. That the person is changed by davening. Since the person is the one that makes the tefillah into a tefillah, so certainly it makes him in a different position. It makes him better because the mitzvah is created through him. See, other mitzvahs, which there is a ma'isa mitzvah, that's not true. The mitzvah is a mitzvah anyway. The ma'isa that you did is no difference how you did it. I mean, what your kavanah was. Elamai, you're not yetzer. Here it's different. Here you make the mitzvah. Your kavanah makes the mitzvah. So obviously, the first and foremost thing that it does is it makes something in you because you're the one that makes the mitzvah. And even in this, because till now what we said is that the similarity between tefillah and sfira is in the chefs of the mitzvah. What is the mitzvah? Sfira, the mitzvah is the kavanah, and tefillah, the mitzvah is the kavanah. Without it, there's no mitzvah. The Rebbe said there has to be even more. Since it happens through the person, there causes a change, so to speak, an effect, an influence on the person. And that part, not only whether it's the chefs or mitzvah or not, is also a similarity between sfira and tefillah. How? Tefillah vasikra is tefillah samid, tefillah which normally the main part of davening is Shmoneh Esrei. What is tefillah? Was Aid is Eimet, stellt sich geab the kamamora, Aid is standing in front of the Eibishter, feeling like he's standing like a servant, a slave, standing in front of his master, for the Eibishter, in front of the Eibishter. You have to see yourself as if you're standing in front of the Shechina. But then, and then if you feel you're standing in front of the Shechina, then you're begging the Eibishter because you're speaking to your master. You turn into a different person. It makes you a different person. You are now standing and you're feeling, so you are now a more elevated person. You're now standing with a bittul to the Eibishter. That's what tefillah is. So tefillah, when it says you have to stand kapla mamora, fits to what we said before. You have to beg. Begging means that I'm bottled to you. I'm begging you. See, asking, not begging. I could ask a friend for something. Begging me something. I'm throwing myself under you. And please help me. That makes me a person who is bottled to the Eibishter. So tefillah, because it comes, the ikar of tefillah is the begging, means that it makes the person in a higher madrega. And that's why it says you feel like you're standing in front of the Eibishter. When a person takes his mind away from all thoughts, like we said before, that when you go to Shmoneh Esrei, you have to feel that way. When he's mischanen and mispalel for the Eibishter, and he begs, davens and begs by the Eibishter. That itself elevates him from his situation the way he was before. steht in a Maimed und Matzav Sheine Legamre. He's in complete different Matzav. Es wird Ashine Bechidish im Legamre. The person becomes different. The person becomes a person that's bottled to Leibishter. Before that, you have thoughts of other things, so you have your own thoughts, you have your own things. And tefillah, because we're saying tefillah is inyan, is that you have to stand and feel it, you're standing in front of the Leibishter, and you have to be mischanen. So what b'shas you're davening, if you daven properly the way you're supposed to, you're completely considered a complete different person. This also we see the sfira. So again, not only we see the similarity that in both cases, what is the mitzvah? What is the heft of the mitzvah? So I'm not talking about the person, I'm talking about the mitzvah. So there's both similar that the mitzvah becomes through the person's kavanah. Now we're saying, and automatically through that, there's another similarity that they both have an effect on the person. By tefillah, we said the effect is the person is in the higher madrege, and the same thing is by sfira. Every day, every yid says, after you count sfira, you say very simple. What do you say? We started by saying, you, in the Rabbi Shalom, we say, you commanded us to count sfira. Today, and we say why? To cleanse us from our klippe, from our impurity. Like you wrote in the Torah, and then we finish off that all this is in order that the nefesh and the nefoshes of the Eden should be cleansed from their impurity. So we see sfira is kedei to be metayaras. So the mitzvah sfira also has this quality of having an effect on making the person toy, making the person higher madrege. So here we see the similarity, another prat in the similarity mitzad the person, not only mitzad the chefs, mitzad the person between sfira and tefillah. The shayches anal is out of the pull and aveda from the odem betfillah b'sfira seimen. And what we said before is because it's all connected, because sfira comes through the person's kavanah, that makes the mitzvah. Tefillah, person's kavanah, so it all comes from the person, and because it all comes from the person, it has an effect on the person. Has an effect on the chefza, has an effect on the person. So the noch ha'inyan mit welchet tefillah takes a chus for the mitzvah. There's another opinion in which tefillah is different than all other mitzvahs, and that is in their, and this is going to be the connection to the beginning of the sikha. In their kavanah mavukash from the tefillah. In what is the purpose? What are you trying to get to? What are you trying to accomplish by tefillah? Tefillah, you're asking for something. And that's part of tefillah. You're asking for Hashem to give you something. So we'll see. Reif kol ha-mitzvah is ikar the ma'isa mitzvah. Most mitzvahs, the main thing is you do the mitzvah. Whatever the mitzvah is, you do it. Shleimus with the kavanah mitzvah. And when is the mitzvah complete? If you have also the kavanah of the mitzvah, fine. When the mitzvah chokiton, eich the gemara mitzvah mitzvah. When you do the mitzvah, you have the proper kavanah, that's finished. You did your share, and that's the whole mitzvah. You have to put on fill, the mitzvah to put on fill. You put it on fill, you did the mitzvah, that's finished. You did the mitzvah. If you have the kavanah, you did the complete. Anders is mitzvah tefillah. Tefillah has something else. For Neizait is that etzem gatherat tefillah sheyadam mischanan mispalel. On one hand, we said, what's the union of tefillah? The fact that I'm begging the Eibishter. I have the kavanah of giving myself over to the Eibishter. Sheil tzrochav shetzorach l'makosher b'tchil. Like Rambam says, you take your needs and you're asking the Eibishter. You're begging the Eibishter for your needs. So you're begging the Eibishter. That's in the kud of tefillah, as we said before. The ibergegemkeit to the Eibishter, you're giving yourself over to the Eibishter, and you're begging. And the word begging means you have a feeling asking him. And what are you asking? That the Eibishter should fulfill what you're asking for. This is not another thing from besides the tefillah. But also the teichen for myself tefillah, beten the Eibishter, part of tefillah is you're asking the Eibishter, begging the Eibishter to give you something. So in the mitzvah of tefillah, you include the fact that there is something after davening. You want the Eibishter to fulfill what you're begging. So basically, you see in tefillah that this is for the purpose of something else. The whole union of tefillah is begging for your needs. So it's begging, so it's a matzav on you. But what are you begging? There's a mavukesh. You're asking the Eibishter to fulfill your needs. So that's part of what you're davening for. Oh, but zusammen the meat is the kiyum mitzvah and tefillah. On the other hand, together at the same time, the fulfillment of the mitzvah from davening nit verbunden klar mit milu bakashas befehl. The mitzvah is not connected at all with Hashem fulfilling what you're asking for. Mit itachnunim, with tefillah sotem is the mitzvah tefillah b'shleimus. The fact that you're asking Davidstedt and you're begging Davidstedt to give you what you need, you did your mitzvah. So the mitzvah is the davening is a mitzvah in itself to beg Davidstedt to give you your needs. So here we have two sides. On one hand, there is a hemshech to the davening. Your davening is that Davidstedt should give you what you're asking for. So it looks like this is a preparation to get what you need. You're requesting something and you're asking he should give you. So tefillah is a preparation to get. On the other hand, what if chas v'sholem Davidstedt doesn't fulfill your bakosha? Is there any lack in your mitzvah? You didn't do the mitzvah properly? The mitzvah is not that Hashem should, the mitzvah is you should ask for it. Hashem has to fulfill it. But part of the mitzvah is that you're asking he should fulfill. So we see the two sides from here. So we see both. Al derech zeh b'negei Sfira Seimer, the same thing by Sfira. Sfira Seimer is a mitzvah se'achon v'achshor tzchak kashur. This is the beginning of the Sikha. Sfira Seimer is a mitzvah that is only it sounds like it's a preparation to the Shvuah Tzematan Torah. Canal see follow, but in the beginning. We frat about beer azeir according to the zeir. It certainly seems that way. At the Sfira from the Zayin Shvuah is al derech Sfira Zayin Nikim. Just like a woman, before she goes to the mikveh, has to count 7 days, 7 clean days. So the 7 weeks is like the 7 clean days. So just like by there, in order to go to the mikveh to make yourself toher, so the whole counting of the 7 days is only a preparation to be able to go to the mikveh. Here also, as dur them by counting 7 weeks of sfiras, I even sich matayr, so we clean ourselves. We should be able to get married, so to speak, today. So sfira on one hand has to do with it's a preparation to something else, which is like davening. Davening is it's a matzah that we're begging the Eibishter to give us something. So we're doing it in order to get something. At the same time, Sfira is an inyan and a mitzvah for itself, and a bracha of itself. And the bracha means amshocha, it's an inyan for itself. This desire and this that we're waiting for and preparing ourselves for Matan Torah is an inyan for sich. It's not only a preparation for Matan Torah, which means, in simple words, it's only a means to an end. This preparation is an end in itself. And it's a very important, very major, fundamental thing. It makes Sfira, as we said before, we say that it makes a Yid pure. It shows the Maila of your Aveda. So it's not only a means to an end. It's a means to an end too. Like we said in the beginning of the Sikh, it's a means to an end to Shvuah. But it has its own inyan also. And this is also the inyan of tefillah. Tefillah is a means to an end. It's a means to an end to ask Hashem to give you, hoping he'll give you what you're asking for. So it's a means to get. And at the same time, tefillah has its own inyan. You daven and you beg the Eibishter and you give yourself over to the Eibishter and you have that kavanah, you will fulfill the mitzvah of tefillah 100%. Even if chas v'sholom, the Eibishter doesn't answer you. The Eibishter doesn't give it to you. So here we see the similarity. So now we understand, as we said before, why the Alter Rebbe finishes the Siddur with Sfira. Because the end of the Siddur is Tefillah, and he ends with Sfira Seimer. Why? Because the end always expresses what the whole thing is, and since the Siddur, which is Tefillah, is this inyan, that it's a means to an end. On the other hand, it's an end in itself. Where do we see that? By the union of Sfira. Besides the other things that we said before. This will explain the difference between Siddur Arizal and the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe. The Siddur from the Alter Rebbe is meduyik mechuven al pinusach Arizal. Even though, as we said before, the Alter Rebbe Siddur fits and it's according to the order of the way it's according to the kavanas of the Arizal. So there's a difference between, even though they basically are the same thing, but there is a difference, and we'll see why. That's because of that. There's a difference in how they end. But this is mutkish. Where do we see really the difference? We see it right away by the Aschala from the Siddurim. We see right in the beginning how the Siddurim start. We see how the Alter Rebbe Siddur starts and how Siddur Arizal starts. Siddur Arizal helps the Chomit Klolas Tikkun V'Aliyah Seilum. Siddur Arizal, they have all the kavanas. So it starts about Klolas to how to cause the Aliyah of the Elamis. It's in part of the kavanas, because right in the beginning it has all kinds of kavanas. So it calls it, this is a general tikkun, how to fix and make Aliyah Seilum. The Siddur from Alter Rebbe finds the Chomit Midah Zeis, starts off with Chatzos. The beginning of the Aved of the day starts with Chatzos. So the Alter Rebbe writes there, you should know, Maila Skimas Chatzos Laila, the greatness of getting up at midnight. And Arcane, therefore he says, Yisam Etzlokem Chatzos, So you should put an effort to get up midnight, any night you can. And you will be amongst those servants of Hashem. That means the Alter Rebbe starts with the union of Aveda. The Siddur Arizal starts with what you're going to accomplish in the Aliyah Seilonis. Which means explanations like this. When you look at the Siddur Arizal and you look at the Pnimis, the Seiders, the secrets that are there, which is only for select few who are able to have kavanah of these kavanas and these yichudim. Yichudim means all the things that you think about what happens in higher worlds. Is the Rinyan not tefillah kela nitna rabbi Aliyah sodom. So according to Kabbalah, according to Siddur Arizal, tefillah is not only the aliyah of the person. The main thing is what you're going to accomplish with tefillah, which is the tikkun aliyah seilamis. According to Kabbalah, when you daven properly, you're going to accomplish the aliyah. The elamis are going to go to a higher madrege. Since through tefillah you're going to cause the elamis to have a higher madrege, that brings about that the Mela, the Eibishter will be mamshich, bring down to you all the things that you need. Spiritual things, physical things, they will cure the sick and they'll bless the years, etc., etc., give a panos, everything. So if the whole purpose of the Siddur is to show the purpose of davening, legabe, bringing the elamis up and bringing the amshochas down, so therefore Sfira Seimer, which the main thing of Sfira, as we said before, is the person's involvement, the person's kavanah, the person's understanding, which means the aved of the person. That's why that's nit besof hasiddur. That's not the end of the siddur. The end of the siddur means this is the tachlis. The tachlis is not the aved. What's the tachlis of Kabbalah according to Siddur Arizal? Nor freer. This is something that comes first. Sfira saying which is the aved is not the tachlis. The tachlis is what the aved accomplishes. So you can't finish off with Sfira, which the Ike Kvetcha Sfira is the Aveda. That's not what the Siddur is all about. So if that comes first, Aveda. After you know that you have your Aveda, which part of it is Sfira, so it's Aveda, and then comes the davening and the Kavanas from the Yom Tevim, then comes the Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, Bishminat Seres and Chastera, the end of the Yom Tevim, Bishminat Chastera. The Senyonim is the Shleimus and the Amshochas of the Vernim Shlomata. And that comes to the end. The Shleimus, the main Amshocha that comes through the year, comes from Natzeres and Chastera. That's like, so to speak, the goal. The goal is the Amshochas, the Aliyas Ha'elamis, and the Amshochas down here. That is by Shminat Seres and Chastera. And that's why the end, which represents the end of the goal of everything of Tefillah, is that dispels the great Hamshachas of these Yom Tevim. In Siddur von Alten Rebbe, in Siddur von Alten Rebbe, welches geschrieben, darf gebeif nashav l'chol nefesh, that's made that should be applicable to everybody. They say this, the kavanas are not begilui canal, and all these secrets and all these kavanas are not revealed. Is the Seder uzgestellt beif, and the Seder of the Siddur is in such a way, as in the minyan of Tefillah is mutig Aveda von Adam. What is the union of Tefillah? The Aveda part. Like we said before, the whole union of Tefillah is the kavan of the person, the Aveda of the person. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is accomplishing through his Siddur. He starts that way. He starts with Katsos, that's how you become an Eivid Hashem. And it goes through until it comes to the Tachlis. But the Tachlis is the Aveda. Ukanal Baruch, as he said before, that the union of Tefillah is the Aveda, as he said before at length, aside the Chefze from Tefillah, aside the Aliyah Sodom Gabra is an union from Aveda Sodom. What is the union of Tefillah? The Chefetz, the object of Tefillah. What is the Maisa of the Tefillah? Is the Aveda of the person, the Kavan of the person. What does it do to the person? It makes the person strong, greater through his Aveda. That's what the whole thing of Tefillah is. It doesn't talk about what it accomplishes and Gavad HaMshochas. My time is a Magdim life as Chola. That's why, because his main thing is the Aveda. That's why the Alter Rebbe starts off and he classifies and tells us right in the beginning the Mailef and Kima Bachatzos, the idea, the specialty of getting up midnight. But then you become part of the servants of Hashem. And the Rebbe is the seal from I see there, nicht mit the tefillas, sondern verbunden mit Dush Tzachak. That's why the end is not with the tefillas. It has to do with the holiness of the Yom Tevim. But that's the Hamshocher, and the Tzvira Seimer. It finishes up with Tzvira Seimer, was his kol kula pula vayda sodom and yal inyonim and all, which is completely aveda. In all the inyonim, aveda with the chefs is the aveda, in the person that's the aveda. It's mainly the aveda of the person. That's what Tzvira, and that's what the Alter Rebbe Siddur is all about. And that's why that's the end. Then the Rebbe says, "Kemedach meinen, so one might think at the Aveda von jeden Joch in Yisrael. The Frat an Aveda was strained belazed and the tag is nicht was viel bekehrt. The pills on your Welt you. So if you stop right here, you would think, okay. So according, it comes out like this. According to the Alter Rebbe, the Siddur is made the Aveda, not with the Aliyah Salem, so not the Tikkun Elam, it's not the fixing, not bringing down. Which seems to say that according to the way Alter Rebbe put it out, we don't have that ability to be to accomplish. If it's only our Aveda, not the Amshocha and Elamis and all these Inyonim, because we don't have the Keach. So an Aveda, which is only counting days, doesn't have the power to cause in the world Tikkun Elamis. That's what you would think. Is Svira Seimer Madgish, as in them Zetman the Pulas Aveda, Mervin under Aveda. So Svira Seimer tells you, no, this is not a small Aveda that can't accomplish. This Aveda is very strong. And this Aveda could accomplish also. Where do we see it? The establishment of Yontev is depending on Yidden. The Gemara says, Manayu. Who makes the dates holy? The Yidden, which means originally the way it was, every month the Bezdin had to decide when the Shchedesh is. And depending on when they decided when the Shchedesh is, that's when Yontev was 15 days later, etc. So it's the Yidden who do Keveya, establish the holiness of the Yontev. Aber mit Bezdin Tafke. Who could do it? Not every Yid could do it. Who could accomplish, make a Yontev? The Bezdin. The Kiddush HaChedesh shel Bezdin. Bezdin and Mekadesh, they sanctified the Shchedesh, and because of that, we know when Yontev is. Which the Gemara says that that's why Shabbos, we finish up the Bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh HaShabbos. You thank Hashem for making holy Shabbos. Yontev, we say, Mekadesh Yisrael ve'azmanim. That they wish to make the Yidden holy and the Yom Tovim. Why don't they say Shabbos also? Mekadesh Yisrael ve'Shabbos. But the Gemara says, because Shabbos doesn't depend on Yidden. Shabbos is Shabbos every 7th day Shabbos. Yontev, because they wish to make the Yidden holy, they have the power to make the Yontev. But who does that? Yidden. But which part of Yidden? The Klal, Bezdin. And the Tfilas von Yidden, Meshach HaRagolim, seinen Atitzom, bringen an Isof in Kedusha Yontev. So when Yidden daven during Yontev, they add to the Kedusha of Yontev. So the Yidden have the power. But there is a Shabbos. Well, Shabbos, even though Shabbos B'Katcha B'Kaim, Shabbos is there holy, whether we like it or not. It's the day itself. Nevertheless, it says Lekatcha. You didn't make the Shabbos even holier than it is on its own. We daven on Shabbos, we make Kiddush Shabbos, we tefillas Shabbos. So we add. But all this starts off with the Bezdin. We see by the counting of Sfira of every individual, neither of Bezdin, not through the Bezdin. You accomplish Shavuos, like we said in the beginning. Shavuos comes from Sfira. There's no other date. It doesn't depend on Bezdin. It depends on Sfira. In the beginning, when Pesach is on Bezdin, but then when Pesach is, you start counting, and every individual counts, and that makes Shavuos. So every individual person, which is Sfira, has the power of making Shavuos. It is not totally because the Shchedesh. It's not dependent on when the Shchedesh Sivan is. Originally, Shavuos could have been or the 5th day of Sivan, the 6th day of Sivan, or the 7th, because it depends on how many days, which day of the month is the 50th day from Pesach. Depends if both months, Nisan and Iyar would be 30 days, which in those days when they had to decide every month could have been, then Shavuos, the 50th day, would be the 5th day of Sivan. If both are 29 days, Shavuos would be the 7th day of Sivan. If one is 29, one is 30, like we have it already set up now, it's the 6th day. So it has no date. It depended not on the Yom HaChamishim Leimer, the 50th day of the Eimer. So we see the power of Sfira, that as much as it's only a small thing, but the power of the Aveda that Sfira represents is able to accomplish much more than other things. These are become a protiv in many ways. For instance, look at the second day of Yontev that we have outside of Eretz Yisrael is Chag HaShavuos harber be'ander Yom Tovim. Shavuos is stricter than other Yom Tovim. While kommt nicht mit der Sofik the andere Yom Tovim, rot sich hakech shamade. Just to explain it very in short. The reason why we have 2 days Yontev, because originally when it started, certain places that were far from Yerushalayim did not know when Bezdin made the Shchedesh. They didn't know when Bezdin made the Shchedesh. So by the time it came to the 15th day of the month, they weren't sure yet. Is today the 15th? Is tomorrow the 15th? We don't know when they did it. So we have 2 days Yontev. because they had a suffix. They didn't know. Now we don't have a suffix because it's a set calendar, but it remained based on that suffix. Shavuos, there was no suffix. Shavuos depends on when Pesach was. By the time we came to Sivan, everybody already knew when Pesach was. So by the time Shavuos came, why do we have 2 days Shavuos? The Rabbanan made it because all the other Yom Tovim have 2 days. It's also 2 days. But one thing we see here, other Yom Tovim started over 2 days because of a suffix. So it's not even clear. Shavuos, the second day, is not a suffix. It's a Vadai. We know what it is, and nevertheless, it's a Yontif. And in some ways, it's harder, more stricter. The Horah 54, the Rebbe brings a Chasam Sefer. The Chasam Sefer says that this deen that we have, that on the second day of Yontif, you're allowed to bury somebody. We don't do it nowadays, most people, but in Adin, you're allowed to. Shavuos, you can't. Every other Yontif you could. Why? Because the second day is a suffix, so it's not so strict. Shavuos is not a suffix. It's the Rabbanan. But it's a Vadai, so it's stricter. So we see that we have a Koyach through our Sfira to make something, to make Shavuos, and make Shavuos, which is such a strong Yontif. This brings out the Maila of a Aveda of a person by davening. The union from Tefillah is nicht nur zum Amtsch sein Lamate in Welt. Das was ich fragen Maila in Shadish. This brings another point. Now Tefillah, when you daven to the Eibishter, it's not. It says a difference between bracha and tefillah. When you give a bracha, tzaddik is able to give a bracha. Bracha means hamshacha. You bring it down. Some things are there l'maylo, but you want it to come down. Not always does it come down. A bracha is mamshich. Tefillah, even if it was not there set up l'maylo, you're asking the Eibishter to make something. Like it says, the rufta from tefillah is yehirot. How do you daven? You ask the Eibishter, let it be the will. What does it mean, let it be the will? Even by the Eibishter, the will is not there. We're asking to make a new will. So, machen kivyochal arotzen chodesh, a new will. Was is nitoy in sheire shemoke, which is not there in the source. And das kommt up in Welt. And you could accomplish with tefillah to make the Eibishter, like change his mind, so to speak, make a new rotzen, and from there it'll come down into the world. And it'll change things down here. Someone is sick, and could be in sheirish and source away lamaila. There is no refuah for him. When you daven, you could accomplish a new will by the Eibishter, and it'll help down here that the sick person will become healthy. As the rain will come down from heaven to earth, it'll make things grow. It says in Tanya, by other mitzvahs, Torah mitzvahs, when you take a piece of parchment and you make it into film, obviously there's this change. This is now a holy object, but you don't see it. It's not something that's obvious. By tefillah, it's obvious. If you daven and the Eibishter accepts it and you make a new will, it's obvious. You turn around, you see the sick person is healthy. So it even affects the Gashmis. So we see the Keyach of Tefillah. The Keyach of Tefillah is so strong because it's your Aveda. And it says before it's your Aveda because not only is your Aveda, you're doing the mitzvah. The Chefza mitzvah is made up by the person. The whole mitzvah of being the mitzvah is because you have the kavanah. The Melech has this power of bringing down. So like I said before, you might think that because the Sfira doesn't have the Keyach, so Sfira has the Keyach. It could make Shavuos. Tefillah has a Keyach to bring down here. That's a Keyach of a person's Aveda. Now when we look into the way the Alter Rebbe himself explains what Tefillah is, that noch besser verstandig werden die Sheiches zwischen Tefillah and Sfira Seimer B'Hesem now. Connected to what we said before, if we look what the Alter Rebbe explains is the meaning of Tefillah, it'll even give a deeper understanding in the connection between Tefillah and Sfira. The Alter Rebbe is Mavayin al-Kutateri, the Alter Rebbe says like this, at Tefillah wird nicht eingerechnet the meaning from Tayag Mitzvahs. Tefillah is not counted as one of the 613 mitzvahs. The truth is that we have 613 mitzvahs. The truth is there are many more. But there's a certain rule which mitzvahs go into that number. Tefillah does not go into that list. Why? So the Alter Rebbe says, well, Tefillah is the kavanah from Kol HaTorah mitzvahs. Tefillah is the kavanah in all mitzvahs. That's the pillar that gives existence to all the mitzvahs, all the 630 mitzvahs, like the spine. The spine is what holds the body up. And it's connected to tefillah because the Gemara says one of the reasons we have 18 brachas in tefillah. Okay, now it's 19 because Lam Shinim was added, but originally it was 18. So the Gemara gives different reasons. One of the reasons is because it's like the spine, which has 18, I don't know what vertebrae, I don't know whatever they call them there, connections in the spine. So Chassidus the saying, the Alter Rebbe explains, because tefillah is like the spine. The spine is the skeleton; it holds up the whole body. Everything is around the spine. So the spine is not considered as part of the body. That's what holds up the body. Davening holds up all the mitzvahs. The Rikirian Tefillah is as Eira Sobaruch was his hecha from the Shtalshalis, that when we daven. So what we do is Eira So, the Eibishter's light, which is higher than Seder Shtalshalis. It's the Eibishter himself. That's why it says B'chol Koreinu Eilov. It says you should daven to him, and the drash is brought down in different svarim. Eilov v'loy lemideisav. You don't daven to Hashem's midas. The midas are Seder Shtalshalis. You have spheres and atzilas, but when you daven straight to the Eibishter, not to the midas. So tefillah accomplishes, it goes to higher in the shtalshalis, and you make zonim shechen lamata in the shtalshalis, and you're able to bring down from such a high level by the Eibishter into shtalshalis. When the Yud Ches brachas from Shemon Esrei and the 18 brachas of Shemon Esrei, zayin the kelim to the Ramshach lamata. These are the vessels of how we bring it down here. As it was zayin the Reif Echel Mavarach Hashonim, that these Hamshocha from such a high madrega should actually come down and do things down here. It should make a person healthy, and it should give a person panos, etc., etc. Yes, Leimar. So this is what tefillah is according to Chassidus. That's the yesod of all Torah mitzvahs that brings down from very high madrega to low. Yes, Leimar. Aderinyan is muti from yuchat by Shvira Seimer. This also we see specifically by Shvira Seimer. How do we see it? That the whole union of Shvira Seimer is like this, that it goes very high and it comes down, brings down the Ein Sof down here. Because every person, right after you count Svira, you say the Rebbeinu Shalom. What do you say there? You say these words, through our Svira, that should bring a great hashpah, a great influence, brings down into all the worlds, which is Dugmas Kolas Hamshachas Ein Sof Na'aleim, which is right away parallel to the bringing down the Hamshach of Ein Sof in all the Elamis through Tefillah. And then we add, and we add plus and and to fix our nefesh, and our ruach, from any blemish. The Hamshoche Klolis, the Shefarab, first we say we should bring down a great Hashpoah. Shefarab, a lot of Shefa. That comes down in what? In our nefesh, in our detail, in us, in Kalim. The Shanas and Ibrahim that changes the things down here, which is like tefillah. So here again we see a similarity between tefillah and sfira. The Rebbe says by us getting involved in the halachas of sfira and talking about its inyan, and also through actually fulfilling the mitzvah of sfira, and with completion as much as it's possible nowadays, which is Zeichel HaMikdash, which is a remembrance of the way it was in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Keilel ha'esek behilchas Sfira Seimer b'nigla, including partial learning the halachas of Sfira in Nigla, and that way it's explained in Pnimis HaTorah, which is basically just what we did in the Sicha. Is das V'maya Kima Tefillah gleich nach Sfira Seimer. This hastens the fulfillment of what we daven right after Sfira. We say the first thing, Yachzir lo na'avedi Beis HaMikdash l'keima, that we're counting Sfira, the Rebbe should bring back the Aveda of the Beis HaMikdash in its place. That means you build the Beis HaMikdash and we shall do the Aveda. And the mitzvah Ketikun, and then we'll do the mitzvah of Sfira complete, because we'll have the Korban Name and then we'll have the complete mitzvah of Sfira. Mamish, Omen Sel, it should be forever. And the word Sel, the Rebbe says on the bottom, means Eila Hefsek, it's Nitzchi, because the Beis HaMikdash Ashlishi will be Nitzchi, will be eternal, and then will fulfill, and all these things will be B'Shleimus.